First of all, I would like to state that I'm an academic. So I'm totally irresponsible. So I can say whatever I want. And in fact, I feel protected because I'm Brazilian and everybody knows that God is Brazilian. So I'm okay with that. The second thing is that I've seen the South-South strategy. Until yesterday, I thought that the panel was on BRICS. So I prepared an intervention on BRICS and not on South-South cooperation. So that's okay. So the title was, Would BRICS Change the World? The answer is very simple. As a group, no way. Maybe China, maybe Brazil, maybe India particularly can have an influence in some parts of the global governance, but the BRICS as a group will not change anything. And for one reason, it's a group where it's one of these groups that we are having now in the world, where countries put together to deal with some very specific questions. The BRICS are a group where countries get together and use to find a way to say no to some very specific issues in the global governance. But they are incapable of saying yes to something. And this is because it is a very heterogeneous group. If you look at BRICS, first of all, I think you shouldn't put Russia into the BRICS. Russia is not an emerging market. Russia is a submerging big power, getting down. And South Africa is not in the same league of these big whale countries that we have here. So I will talk more about BICS, BIC, which is Brazil, India, and China. And even in this group, we all know that, for example, you have a lot of different interests inside, and even very dangerous strategic confrontations growing between China and India. So as a group, it's a group that sometimes can say no to some things, but it will never say yes to something. But what unites all these BICS? I think what unites them is that they all think that the pre-Lehman Brothers world was the best of the worlds for them. It was a world where huge amounts of credit and cheap credit were nourishing huge transnational production chains that were very good for them, with products that were bought by huge, big developed markets. Let's never forget that in nominal terms, which is like we should look at in the global economy, the domestic market of the United States, or I would say the domestic final consumption market of the United States, is more than 1/3 of the world final consumption, private consumption. And Europe is another third. China is 3% of the world's private final consumption. So if there is nobody to buy these products, all this big chain will have problems. It was a world, where the West consumes, the BRICS and some other countries produce, get rich, and with its riches, it can distribute a little bit to its growing middle class without touching the interest of their traditional elites. And this is what China, India, and Brazil did in the last 20 years. And it was very successful on that. So in this framework, what the emerging countries want is that the political authorities of the United States and Europe put their house in order so we can come back to a very more stable thing, where we were doing very well. The emerging countries know that they are profoundly dependent on the global economy and on the markets of the traditional developed countries. And they know they were the countries that most benefited from this last 20 years. Let's not forget that 800 million people got out of poverty in the last 15 years because of this financial merry-go-round, etc., etc. So in that sense, the BRICS or the BICS in multilateral instances, they don't have much to propose besides having more voice in the decision-making. They don't feel responsible for the crisis we have now. Their only problem is to try to avoid having to pay the bill in the end. So I think this explains why they have a huge campaign now of saying we want to be part of the decision-making process, the strategic decision-making process in the IMF, in the World Bank, in G20, etc., etc., but not to take responsibility for the whole process, but to defend their own interest more than that. It's what a South African researcher called lucrative multilateralism. We are multilateralist when we can take. We are not multilateralist when we have to give. I think the emerging countries now know that if you're not at the table, it's because you are in the menu. But what they forgot is that when you are at the table, you have to buy the goods, you have to cook them, and you have to wash the dishes. And right now, it's not exactly this kind of vision that we have with emerging countries. And the argument is very easy. It is that because we didn't have any part in the rulemaking, the previous rulemaking process, we don't have to defend and manage these rules, even if we benefit from them. So I think this explains why we are having now problems with the G20. The G20 is little by little losing relevance. And if you look really at what happens in the G20, it's the same old little club of the G7, not even the G7, some big countries of the G7 who always come with proposals and solutions, etc., etc. And the others say yes, no, but there's no big contribution from emerging countries in the G20 in that sense. And here I think we are in front of the real challenge we have for the next 20 years. We have discovered that with the euro crisis, everybody has discovered it, that the problem is not technical management from economists. The problem is politics. It's political. How to manage that. It's not a problem of governance. It's a problem of government. It's not a problem of global governance. It's a problem of global government in that sense. Governance is to bail out water from the boat in order not to sink in the tempest. Government is have somebody on the helm that has enough authority to organize the bailing out, who says, well, we should repair this hole, how you can rerun the engine, and where the boat has to go. So we are far away from that. So I would like to give you 4 scenarios for the next 4 years. It'll be very, very quickly. The first one, I think, is totally improbable and probably impossible, which is the emergence of a global world government. Nobody would like that. And if something like that emerged, there would be so much opposition that to stay in power, to have some authority, it will have to become a huge and totalitarian big brother, which would be a very unstable way of organizing the world. So I think this scenario is not ready to arrive.